Hey everyone, thanks for checking us out. The video is all about the Vue 2 install on the circuit breaker, the sensors, the controller, and registering with the app, and actually going through a lot of the functionality within the app. A review of the accuracy and usefulness of it may come at a later time when it's collected more information. During the install, I'll use wrong terms, ground, neutral, RCA jack versus headphone jack. Just follow through and I'm sure you'll understand as you see exactly how the install goes. Thanks. Alright, so we have our Emporia Vue 2. We can go ahead and open it up. Let's see what we got inside. So looks like maybe control unit, sensors, and accessories. So, nicely packed. Accessories, there's your phase monitoring. We have our sensors here. Looks like each one's probably about the size of a thumb. Long enough cord to plug into the main unit. Take out this guy. Not much to him, but so we got 8 plugins on either side and probably your phases on the top. He's got a numbered on the back. So ABC. It's probably, I guess, maybe 3 phases, but we're only using 2. At least I'm only using 2. Let's see if there's anything else on this side. There's not, so that one's empty. Sensors, phases. We have some accessories here. Some short cables. We have our Wi-Fi plug and a nut. Yeah, so our power cord is probably 2 feet. So, 1 phase, 2 phase, power cables. There's your plug in the back. Phase on top, sensors on the side, and then we have our Wi-Fi antenna extender for outside the box. And these are all 50 amp and 50 amp. So the unit doesn't come with any instructions, so we're just going to have here, it says scan the QR code to download the app. So I'll go ahead and get that. And install. I'll wait for it and see what it says. Alright, so we got 2 200 amp panels with 150 amp breakers on the outside. We just have one Vue 2 right now, so we're going to take off the first panel as it has some of the main circuit breakers that we're trying to monitor. So we'll go ahead and take that panel off and get inside. Okay, so we got our first panel here, and on this side I have 3 open circuit breaker slots. So we have these bottom 2 and then one on this other side, and we need to monitor both phases coming in. So we have phase 1, phase 2, and then our ground. And so what I'm going to do is just put 2 new circuit breakers down here at the bottom so we can monitor both phase 1 and phase 2, and then we'll work on connecting that up into our Vue 2. So all we should have to do is take this guy and kind of snap him in it again. If you're not a licensed electrician, don't do this. It's very dangerous and you could kill yourself. So we don't want to be messing around with any of that. So just got a rocker, just pop it in. I do have them turned off, so we don't have to worry about that. So both those guys are in. So now we can monitor both phase 1 and phase 2 on here. Alright, so based off the instructions, with 2 empty breakers and monitoring the 2 phases, we're going to take your cord and we're going to take the white and the blue and put them on the neutral, and take our red and our black and attach one to each breaker that we put in. So let's just pull off these little cuts they already have for us. I'm going to run these up on the side. Again, don't be doing this if you're not a licensed electrician. And just be extremely careful, because obviously you're dealing with hot wire if you haven't turned it off. You get that screw right on there so you get a good contact. Alright, we got both done. Now we need to get both our phases connected up and the breakers are off, just to make sure it's not a problem. Go ahead and get these guys in. Okay, so now we got both these guys in there nice and tight. Those right around there. Put these guys up a little bit and we'll plug them back into the bottom of the view where the cord is. Now both these breakers are off, so we still don't have any power associated with it just yet. Hey guys, just doing a quick follow-up and inserting this in the video after I was watching it. And you couldn't get a good view of where I was grounding the wires on the grounding bar. And so there is your white and your blue on the ground bar itself, and then you have your black and your red going into the breakers themselves. So when you're hooking up the power for your view, that is how you want to get them done. Alright, so the next step is to connect up the phase 1 and phase 2 to the view. So we have the large clips that go on here, and you have to put them on a certain way or you actually register negative voltage. So the easy way to tell is the symbols on the front for the name. There's not one on the back. And they also tell you, if we can see, that there is a K to L and the arrow goes towards the breakers. So we'll go ahead and try and get that hooked up here. Of course, I wrapped up a little too much, but we're good. Alright, now of course with the metal going down, make sure you don't touch anything. Depending on how you wire it and get it in there, because you don't want to be causing any problems. So I'm just going to put this right here and then feed it down the side behind these wires. I like to try and keep it a little clean. Usually just go a few at a time and then we'll work our way all the way down. Now we'll just take this one again with the symbol on the outside, the arrow going towards the breakers, and clamp it around this first one. Alright, and you'll hear it click. They may not have heard it there. We'll let it sit right there. Should be good. Pull it all the way down. And then on your box, it is labeled A, B, C. And so we'll plug this first one into A. Alright. All that nice and clean. And then we'll have to repeat for the second one. So I'll unwrap this guy. Saran wrap and twisty ties. Alright, same process. Just be careful, pull these guys down to the back. A few wires at a time, make it easy. And you could leave them in front if you want to. This is just the way that I like to do it. So whatever you can do to be safe, make sure that you don't cause any problems. There we go, all the way down. And we got to turn around, so we got to go this way. Or in the front, K to L with the arrow pointing towards the breakers. So go ahead and snap that one on. Let it come down, so probably can't see that, but you notice the wires are both going out to the left, and the arrows are pointing on the bottom, pointing down towards the breakers. And we'll go ahead and take this one and put it into B. Okay, so we got our main phases going, we have our ground, and then our two breakers here. The breakers are off. Well, the next things I wanted to do was to put in, mark out for the antenna, wireless antenna. So it should be pretty short, and it does have a little thing here, so we'll just knock out a little hole in the bottom of the panel and stick it in there, and then we'll be able to get our Wi-Fi antenna out of the box. And it has to be out of the box because within that steel box you just don't get very good signal anywhere. So all we need to do is just take a screwdriver and a hammer and find one of these holes on my panel. It has a whole bunch down here at the bottom, and we're just going to pop it real lightly with a hammer, and it pops up inside. And put those down, and then you can probably just get it with your fingers, just bend it back and forth until it just kind of pops off. And then you'll have your little piece of metal out with a hole, and we'll take our antenna and pop that black piece into the hole in the inside, kind of cover it up so we don't leave any holes exposed in the box, and it fits in there very nicely. And then on our Emporia box, it's got the antenna at the top where the phase 1 and phase 2 connect in, or your main power feeds, and we'll just screw that in there. And that is now good to go. So now all we're left with are the individual monitors on the circuit breakers themselves. Now when this comes in from shipping, they have saran wrap on every one of these, and I have 16 monitors. It took about 15 minutes because you kind of got to play with it and find out where that wrapper is. There's no real sign for it. And unwrap it. Looks nice, but it's really a hassle. Then unwrap the twist tie. And then we'll have our cord here. It looks maybe, I guess, about 3 feet. And again, one of the little clamps. So you just lift up your finger on this little clamp here on the side. It opens up, put it over the wire, clamp it back down. Now I did read in the instruction, it doesn't matter which way you put these on there, you know, as far as the power is concerned, the Emporia logo does not have to be on the outside. So now we have 16 of these to put on. Probably what everyone should do, and certainly your own choice. I went through and listed out the panel and listed out every circuit breaker, and there are, I don't know, there's probably around 35 in this box itself, so I can't monitor all of them. So I specifically highlighted ones that I want to monitor and where they're at. So now in this app, when you have a dual breaker power going out, things like we're 240As and we're using 2 phases, you should be able to monitor just one line, because the power draw should be the same on both sides. For this install, and to make sure that that's accurate, that's what I've been reading, I'm going to actually put one monitor on each line, and then we'll pull it together. Now in the app, currently they cannot add 2 lines or 2 sensors to total up for one monitor, if you will, or one unit of power being used to monitor how much power this breaker is actually drawing, or these breakers. You actually have to add them up manually. However, if once I do that in my case, and I make sure that the equal power usage between both of them, I know that I only need one sensor, and in the app you can double or triple the amount of power going from one line for the number of power feeds that it has. So in other words, I believe this is my dryer. I'm going to put 2 on there, so I'm going to monitor each side of this 40 amp feed. and they should end up being equal when the dryer is running. And so then I can come back and take the monitor off the second line and put it on one of my other breakers that I want to monitor. And in the app, I'll go into the dryer feed for this sensor, and I can just double it so that it shows accurate usage between both lines. And you can do that for any one of these guys that are dual breaker. So now for our first one, let's see, we have a furnace. So I'm going to pull this one guy in and pop him on there. You can hear him snap, so you got a good connection. And I'm going to leave these on the outside because these may change at some point in time. And also in my sheet that I went through and created, I also labeled each one of the sensors so that I know which one is which. So when I come back through here after we get all these on, I'll go on the bottom of them and I'm going to label each sensor 1, 2, 3 all the way through 16. And then if I want to move them, I just change them on my spreadsheet, so I know which one's being monitored, and I can go ahead and change them in the app and change the description, assuming they have something like that. And you can see also, from just another note, on these power sensors, if I want to put another one in, I have enough room down here at the bottom, at least right now, to put another Emporia in there so I can monitor every circuit, or almost all of them, since there's 36. But if I get away with monitoring just one on these double ones, that'll at least free me up 3 more, and there's actually 2 more down here for the water heaters. And I have plenty of room up here to attach 2 more feeds. So you could actually, in my box anyway, you could put 2 of them in there. So now I'm just going to go through and hook up all the monitors and plug them in and make sure that, like this guy in my sheet, he's sensor number 1, and on the box itself, on the back, they're all labeled 1 through 16. So I make sure I plug him in the little RCA port for number 16. So we'll go through and get all that done. Just counting everything off, and you can see we have a nice big mess of wires here. One more thing on the antenna is don't forget to screw on your antenna down at the bottom. As you can see, a huge mess of wires, but we'll take care of that here in just a second, or a little bit. Because what we're also going to do is I'm going to go through and number all these sensors, and then I'll number them down here on the bottom on these individual RCA plugs that go in. And that way when I go to move them around, I know exactly where I'm moving them and I don't have to trace them out or anything like that, especially after we get some cables kind of nice and cleaned up in here. So now we'll go ahead and turn on these breakers, and we should hear a little sound based on from what it says. So okay, here we go. Very high-pitched sound, and I got a green light. And now it's off to the app. Because I want to make sure everything's working before we go back in here and clean everything up. So I don't know if you can see that or not, but it does have, see if I can hide the light from it a little bit. It does have a nice green light on it. So now I'll go see what the app says. Okay, so there's not a whole lot in the instructions as far as what to do next other than download the app and install it. So I've downloaded the Emporia app. I used the QR code that was one of the boxes, or you can just search for it in the Apple Store or Google Play. And I used the create account option that emailed me a passcode and entered that, and now we're ready to go. So as we can see here, we do have the Emporia Vue 2 or Gen 2, so we'll click on that guy. And we've already done the installation, so we'll go to setup. And I don't have any solar, so we'll keep going. Alright, so tap the number of the... Alright, so we got our box handy here still. I'm going to assume that is correct since we don't have anything else going on. Let's double check though, 252. Okay, that matches up. So note to you, if you're installing it, make sure you have the box handy or the last few digits of the UPC on the back. So now it looks like we'll go ahead and connect up Wi-Fi. And your phone does have to have Bluetooth enabled. Alright, so we'll put in our password here. 3. Next. Connect to Wi-Fi. Alright. So this guy is in what I call panel 1, so we'll name the panel. Panel 1. And we are in Eastern time, so -5. Okay, and we'll save it so we can just see that. Okay, so that seems simple enough. Let's see if it's working. And I'm not seeing anything yet, so I don't know if that's just not set up yet or not. Alright, so here we go. I've gone through and I've started labeling all these circuits so I can see what they are. And when I first opened the app, as expected, there wasn't any values, but we actually did start seeing numbers populate about 10 minutes, 15 minutes afterwards, which is good because now we know it's operating correctly. So to go in and actually name each circuit that you should have from your sheet so you know where it is as far as what you're monitoring. So we go to Settings, and then we'll go to Manage Devices and Panel 1 and Circuits, and Panel 1 is what I named it. Yours probably going to be different. And then we have last one here with Circuit 16, and that is my water heater. And it is the second breaker in it. So we should be like so, and then we can hit the circuit type, the little down arrow, and scroll down and hit water heater. And I don't think this really matters necessarily, but you can probably pick anything. I think it's more, they may be collecting data more than anything else. Once we validate that both circuits are collecting the same amount of power, then what we can actually do is remove the second sensor on the second feed, and then use this multiplier that's right here and just set the multiplier to 2. So that when we're looking at one feed that has 2 breakers, it is actually just doubling the power. So like on the water heater that has 2 40-amp breakers, assuming what we're doing right now is monitoring both, but that should end up being equal. And if it is, then we can remove the monitor from the second breaker and then just double the power right here for a multiplier on the first breaker. And that'll give us an accurate reading, and we can have an extra sensor to monitor something else. So we'll save that, and we can see that if we go backwards and go to Home. We have the 2 water heaters right here that have been running for some time, and you can see the usage is exactly the same between the 2 of them. And if we look at, see what else we could find. Well, I guess none of these other ones really have usage as of yet, so we'll have to wait. So the next thing we want to do is to set up the cents per kilowatt hour to give us an accurate reading on our bill. So now if we go to Settings in the bottom right, and we go to Household Info, we can go to Set Utility Rate, and Panel 1, which is what I named it. And let's go, instead of 13.2, I'm going to say it's 9 cents. Now I have different cost per kilowatt hour based on the amount that's actually used versus time of day, and it goes up, and there's a little bit of a surcharge on top of that, and I'm just kind of rounding it up to 9 cents. So I won't be 100% accurate, but it should be relatively close. So we'll save it, and then we'll go back, and Home. And now we can actually see what is actually costing us the most as far as power usage. And of course over time it'll keep picking it up. We're updating about every minute because we have minute. Let's see if we look at hour. You can see there's different things. Water heater is obviously higher. Something good that'll pop up over time. Okay, so now we have the app done. We verified everything is working, and we have this rat's nest of wires that we need to clean up. One thing that I did go through and do is on each one of these guys, I labeled it, or really numbered it, for the monitor that is plugging into. So we have 1 through 16 down here on this box, and then based on where this wire goes, I've labeled 1, and then this one's 13, 11, 6, and so forth, so that if I ever want to move one around, I know exactly what plug it is and what it should go to. So now we'll take a second and we'll go through and clean all this up so it fits nicely in here. Okay, well here we are with the finish. So as mentioned, we got our 2 feeds, or really 2 phases coming in. We have the monitors going down, and if we can see the K through L right here, the arrow is pointing down. And it's easy because just make sure your Emporia logo is up at the top. Then we have all of our sensors numbered for where they plug into the main unit on their own wires. And then down at the bottom we have the main unit with everything in it. And I've also numbered all the numbers for all the cables down here. So if I unplug one, it's really easy to know exactly where it goes back in, which I did several times, trying to get all the wires best situated as possible. So now with the breaker box, everything's in nice and tight. I could probably get another one in here. I think it'd really just be tight down here at the bottom with these wires, but I'm sure I could get it to work. So the next thing to do is just put our panel back up and cover everything back up. And don't forget, we did put these 2 breakers in, so when you put the panel back up, you got to pop out that metal switch cover so that these breakers can come through. Okay, so we have the panel back on. We have our 2 new breakers labeled, and you could use a much lower than 20 amp breaker. I just use that so that in case if I ever did want to wire something else in that breaker, that I would have plenty of amperage. I don't have to worry about swapping anything out. And then if we close that up, down below we can see our little wireless antenna hanging out down at the bottom. And that's it. So now on to the app. Alright guys, so we're back here to the app. Everything's installed and labeled and put back together. Everything appears to be running good, and I just wanted to give you another run through the app so you can see what it looks like with some data now. A little bit ago I changed my kilowatt hour price, and I haven't seen the prices come back through. We'll have to wait and see how that ends up going. So right now, let's see if we go to settings, and I notice the notifications, we can add specific alerts. I guess if you wanted to know if something exceeded a certain kilowatt hour for an extended period of time. And then there's also some interesting things here that'll be nice. They all say future or not yet functional. So home mechanical issues such that maybe your HVAC or water heaters or something are pulling too much energy or out of normal, you can get an alert for it. We go back for unusual consumption, same exact thing, not yet available, but if something from the panel sees something odd, it will come through and show you. Energy savings options. I'm already well aware of a lot of things that I could save, not interested in getting alerts about it. Money savings, perhaps if they know your utility or certain rates, like obviously if you run more stuff at night versus during the day, if you have run outside of peak periods. And then Emporia notifications themselves, so planned outages. Be good to know just in case. So then if we get back all the way to the beginning, or we can go back into household I guess first. We got our utility rate. You can set your time zone, your square footage, your house. Honestly, a lot of this I think is more to collect information about you versus needed for the app. I mean, it has absolutely nothing to do with multiplying your power usage times your kilowatt hour rate. But you can fill it out if you want. Perhaps it'll highlight something in the future at some point. So if we get all the way back out and we go back home, Again, we got all our devices here. There's 16 of them because I'm using all 16 devices. And if we go back to, or 16 sensors, and if we go back to graphs, somewhat interesting. So if you click up here at the top where it has panel 1, or maybe it's a little finger icon there, or fuse kind of icon, you can see all your 16 devices on here. So I can go to my water heater, and we can look at that, and we can see how it's being used. And then you can change between, if you click, see a dollar sign, you can go to watts, or we click dollar sign and go to amps, and any one of these other features. So, you know, your green stuff, car, miles, carbon dioxide, trees. And again, if we go back and we look at, so I'm clicking on this little icon on the top left in the green with the solid filled in circle and then the 3 open dots. If we click on that, we can remember I have 2 water heaters, or 2 phases for each water heater, 2 breakers that are linked together for 80 amps total. And assuming these guys end up being equal in cost, I can take one of the sensors off and move it onto a different circuit breaker so we can monitor more information. And we have, you know, furnace at summer, it shouldn't really be doing hardly anything. And we can go back to, let's say, one of the bedrooms, and it's not really doing anything there. We can click on a little tree at the top and go back to dollars. Since we're not reporting anything yet with dollars, let's go back to just look at watts, and we can see how many watts that room is using, or whatever's on that breaker. So good information, a lot of ways to pull through, and overall it seems pretty good so far. It does have this savings app or button down at the bottom. Honestly, it's just about a bunch of advertisements. You can read through them if you ever want to. Talks about smart thermostats, LED bulbs, managing energy for time, and other things like that. So that is about it. And so now, oh, look, so now we got, well, this is in watts, so I wonder if we got our dollars back yet. Nope, no dollars back. Well, we can't see in watts where everything's being pulled. So, interesting. So now we'll just have to monitor and see how things go and see how accurate it is. So one final comment on the Emporia Vue 2. I looked at several different devices. I looked at Sense, I looked at Wiser, I looked at Eydro, EYEDRO, SMAPI, Nurio, Engage, and Curb. And all of these seem like they would work pretty well. There's a following for them. On Sense, I would say if you want to monitor your whole house usage and you don't want to have all the wiring but just the top phases, it might work pretty good. Best I can tell is Discovery is haphazard at best, and you may discover 20% of the devices in your house, and so you'll never really know what's using the power itself. By using the Vue's monitors on each individual breaker, you know exactly what is using that power because it's on that breaker. You just have to know where that breaker goes. On some of these other ones like Eydro, it was very expensive. It needed multiple units. That's one thing that's really good about the Vue 2. It has 1 unit and it has 16 monitors, and that's a fairly decent amount because most of the breakers in a house rarely get used. You know, you might have like GFI outlets in a bathroom, unless you're running a hair dryer or curling or other things like that to have a high draw. There's not much going on there. It could be like outlets in a garage and things, so you can pull things out. Engage was also a really good one, EGAUGE, but it's also very expensive, and that's also where Emporia Vue 2 comes in right at the perfect piece. We can download the data from the app as far as into a CSV and create our own graphs in Excel or some other application. So we have the raw data itself. It has a small box with 16 sensors, which is a lot compared to all these other ones. Most of the other ones only have 4 to 8. And then on top of that, it was relatively inexpensive compared to a lot of these other guys. I believe it was about $140. So overall, has more monitors, more sensors. It has a single box. You have control of your raw data and the cost. And so we'll see how this goes, and hopefully throw another update up, maybe a month or two, and go through a whole nother review and see how everything adds up. Thanks for watching.